So right in the middle of a huge crisis, with protests shaking the country and the whole world watching, Iran is sending out two totally different signals. On one side, you have pure defiance, and on the other, diplomacy. This is what we're calling Iran's dangerous double game, and we're going to break down what it all means.
And this right here really gets to the heart of the puzzle. In the exact same breath, Iran's foreign minister says the country is prepared for war, but also ready for negotiations. So what is going on? Is it a threat, an olive branch? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is, it's kind of both. So where are these mixed signals even coming from? Well, they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. To really get Iran's two-faced approach, you have to look at what triggered it, a really serious threat that came from the United States just days earlier. And that was this statement from President Trump. He was suggesting that military options were on the table to deal with the government's crackdown on protesters. That really set the stage. Iran's response, this weird mix of being tough and being open to talk, was a direct answer to this pressure from Washington.
Okay, so to really understand why Iran is playing this double game right now, we have to look inside its borders. This whole international standoff isn't just about politics between countries. It's being fueled by a massive crisis at home that has shaken Iran to its core.
And the human cost has been just staggering. We have at least 200 confirmed deaths from the government's crackdown on these protests. And, some rights groups are worried that the real number is actually much, much higher. The stakes inside Iran could not be higher.
So, how did we get to this point? This timeline shows just how fast things escalated. It all started back in late December with protests about economic problems, people struggling to get by. But that quickly snowballed into a direct challenge to the country's clerical rulers. And now, Iran is in the middle of a violent crackdown and an information blackout, which makes it really hard to know what's fully going on.
So who does Tehran blame for all this unrest? Well, no surprises here. The official story points the finger outward. Top Iranian officials have said over and over that the United States and Israel are the ones behind the protests. It's a pretty classic move to distract from what's happening at home.
All right, let's get into the who of all this. Who are the key players in this high-stakes war of words? It's really important to see the difference between what they're saying in public, which tells one story, and what they're doing in private, which, well, that suggests something else entirely.
This right here, this is the public face of defiance. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, he uses these huge, state-run rallies to project this image of strength and unity. And his message is totally uncompromising, calling the rallies a warning to the U.S.
But, and this is a huge but, here's where that whole double game really snaps into focus. While the supreme leader is out there making these public threats, behind the scenes, a totally different game is being played. Secret talks, back channels for diplomacy, they're not just open, they're active.
And we can actually see the second track in action. You've got Oman, which often acts as a go-between, holding meetings in Tehran. We also know that there are channels open between Iran's foreign minister and President Trump's envoy. Heck, Trump himself has even claimed that Iranian leaders called him to negotiate.
So this brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why play this complicated double game? This isn't just confusion. It's a very deliberate strategy, and it's designed to handle pressure from both inside and outside the country.
This table really breaks down the logic. That hardline stance, that's for supporters at home. It's about projecting strength and blaming foreign enemies for all the trouble. But the diplomatic stuff, that acknowledges reality. The country is still recovering from the devastating 8-year war with Iraq, and its economy is desperate for sanctions to be lifted. It's a really delicate balancing act. There's actually a term for this. Experts call it domestic sentiment management. And it's a pretty clever political tactic. The tough talk makes the government's base feel secure, like they're not backing down. But at the same time, all the whispers about negotiations, that gives hope to regular Iranians that maybe, just maybe, a deal could be made to make their lives a little easier. But, and this is really important, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Even though these channels are open, a lot of analysts are pretty skeptical. They think this could just be a tactic to calm down the markets, not a real move towards some big agreement. The political gap between the US and Iran is still absolutely enormous. So where does all of this leave us? Well, it leaves us stuck in a very dangerous stalemate. You've got a country in chaos, a government playing a double game, and international tensions that are just about at a boiling point, and there's no clear way out. And that leads us to the big unanswered question. With these huge protests on the inside and all this pressure from the outside, the situation just feels like it can't last. Something's got to give. But what will it be? And who is going to blink first?
And maybe this quote from expert Vali Nasser says it all. For the protesters to win, the regime has to start cracking. But so far, even with all this pressure, Iran's leadership is holding that defiant line, even while it's quietly exploring its options. The game is still on, and the world is just waiting to see who folds first.